to lessen the opposition and persuade the audience to at least accept that the position has some merit. Following the speech, the speaker is to conduct a 2 to 3 minute question and answer period. In addition to your oral evaluation, please write answers to the below questions. Hello. No. So I'd like to invite Alice, and her title is Divvy Bikes.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests. I bet many of you did not realize this, but we have 46 million visitors who come into Chicago every year to visit Chicago. And more importantly, any one of those can actually rent a Divvy bike. Tonight I'd like to propose that anyone who rents a bike is actually required to look at a safety video in advance. And what I'd like to propose is just a simple 5-minute video that's actually going to explain to people what bike safety is all about. The 3 things I'd like to cover in that video are very simple. 1, why you should wear a helmet. I don't think a lot of people know that. 2, the second thing is you should actually be responsible to have a map with you at all times of the Divvy locations. And 3, I think it's really important for people who come to this city to be able to navigate an urban environment. And I don't think people realize that when they check a bike out. And just recently, as it's gotten colder and slicker, I've actually noticed for the first time that there is a public safety problem with having bikes in the city. And many of us are probably not aware of this, but we have a lot of international people who probably have never even been on a bike, think it's a great concept, walk up and say, I think I'll rent a bike today for the first time in their lives. And I think you have to say, you know, we have to have a little bit of public safety up front, and we'd like to require you to actually wear a helmet. And a helmet is actually more of a health concern, and it's going to be a life-saving measure for someone who maybe gets in an accident. Secondly, I don't think people realize this, there are actually no maps on the bikes themselves, and there are no maps when you check the bike out. So unless you are from Chicago and realize you can download the app, a lot of people don't know where it is they're riding their bike to. So I think you have to say we need to have a map of Chicago and all the Divvy locations up front, so you can kind of conceptualize, I've got this bike for this length of time, and where am I going to return it to? Lastly, a lot of people who rent these bikes have absolutely no concept of what it's like to ride a bike in the city. And I just want to point out, you could just give them 4 really simple rules to follow that could really improve their life. And the first one is, you can't ride your bike on the sidewalk. I know that seems like a simple thing, but I see it all the time. Secondly, you've got to yield to pedestrians. You've got to be able to stop your bike and let somebody go in front of you. That's what we do here in Chicago. You've also got to make sure that you're riding your bike with the traffic. And 4th, make sure you're obeying the traffic signal. So Divvy needs to present, I think, just some really simple concepts of what it's like to ride a bike before you actually get on one. And I'd like to say, we're also protecting pedestrians, we're protecting people who are in a car, and I think you have to know the rules of the road before you rent a Divvy bike. So that's what I'd like to propose, a short video before you actually rent anything in Chicago. And I want to open it up. Does anybody have anything they disagree with, or not sure you'd like to, wouldn't like to see that happen? Heidi?
Where are you going to find the helmets?
I think the helmets have to be going with the bike itself. I mean, you can't expect a person to bring a helmet with them. The helmet has to be part of riding the bike. I think we require people to actually have a seatbelt, and if we're requiring people to wear a seatbelt, I think you're also required to wear a helmet with a bike.
Yeah, but what about a lice problem or any other disease?
That is true. I think that's something we have to take into consideration. I think somebody's going to return that, and perhaps that's a safety concern that people need to actually have the helmets looked at before they rent one out. But did you have another concern, opponent?
I have a lot of concerns. I'm very annoyed by the bikers in general because I think they can't decide whether they want to be a pedestrian or a vehicle, and they're
Right.
in the middle, and they're abusing all the rules of the road.
I totally agree with that.
And so I don't care if they're wearing a helmet or not. I wish they were off the road, period. But as far as the helmet is concerned, I don't think you can make people wear something they don't want to wear.
Right, I think all of us think of ourselves as competent people, and we don't like to be told that. But I think when you start to look at statistics, it's kind of a life-saving thing that's actually going to help somebody in the long run. I mean, a lot of people don't want to buy insurance, and they don't want to wear a seatbelt, but those are just kind of things we just take into effect that we have to do. John?
Well, I don't know if it's a good idea to, I like to ride on sidewalks, but I don't think it's a good idea to ask inexperienced people to, even though for the majority of people it's safer to ride on the street, actually an inexperienced person would probably feel more safe on the sidewalk, and the street might be too much for them. And my second point is, I know quite a few veteran bicycle riders that disagree that a helmet is necessary. They say, this is what they say, that bicycle riding in general is so safe, and the fatalities, let's face it, in the city, whether it's a handful out of the millions of riders, is so small that many argue helmet is not as important, say, if you're on a motorcycle. And it's just a pleasure thing too. I don't know that you can get people to use it.
Okay, but I think if you allowed one person to ride on the sidewalk, then you're kind of encouraging that anybody can do it. So, and especially now that we have a lot of snow, slip things, I think people are. It's just not practical to say one can do that.
I think it is a law that you can't, but the police don't enforce it.
But I don't understand this riding a bicycle in the snow. I don't see it anywhere in the world. I mean, do Eskimos ride bicycles? Or do they have sleds?
Well, surprisingly, December was like one of their highest months. I was unaware of that too until I was reading about it.
I just see on my car, once a lot of wet snow gets on my tires, and they're fairly new, they slide. So the bicycle must slide also all over the world. I would be more concerned about that.
So you're proposing that instead we just not allow anything to happen during like the snowy cold months? No,
I'm not proposing anything.
Okay.
But you do it at
Okay.
your own risk.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, and I appreciate all of your input.